Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I thought that I would do a bookshelf tour. On my first video, my newbie tag had a couple of comments about my bookshelf. So yeah, I thought that I would do this to just show you what's on the bookshelf, show you the books that I enjoy, the ones that might feature on a future TBR, and yeah, just have a look at what's there. Let's take a look. So at the top of the first bookshelf, we have Cloud Busting by Mallory Blackman, which is a book of different forms of poetry, which tell the story of two boys at school. Really great book. I bought that secondhand from a car boot sale. It was the second Mallory Blackman book that I owned. And then next to that, we have the Noughts and Crosses series. So this is the first four. There's a fifth book out, which I haven't read yet. Okay, so just wanted to stop a moment to talk about Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman. Now, this I would say is probably one of my favorite series of all time. The books are just brilliantly written. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, it tells of I guess kind of like an alternate reality where you've got the noughts, you've got the crosses. So the noughts are lighter skinned, and then you've got the crosses who are darker skinned, and they are the ones with all the power and influence in this world. You may be familiar with it if you haven't read the book, because it was recently a BBC adaptation, which was brilliant. And yeah, like I say, I haven't read the fifth book, which was the most recent one, but the first four books are brilliant. So yeah, really love these. Back to the top shelf, and we also have the Hunger Games books by Suzanne Collins. So we have the Hunger Games, Catching Fire and Mockingjay. Again, another one of my favorite series. I really love these ones. Of course, we do now have a fourth book, a prequel, The Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes, which I haven't read yet, but have heard a lot about. So we'll be picking that up at some point. And then second shelf down, we have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. Picked this up secondhand, I believe. Haven't got round to reading it yet. And then we also have The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This was lent to me quite a few years ago, and I started to read it, couldn't really get into it, so stopped, but I will pick that up again and give it another go, because I've heard really great things about the story, and of course it was a TV adaptation as well. Then next to that, we have Dark Water by Koji Suzuki. Then next to that, another two of probably what are my all-time favorite books. We have Ring and Spiral, also by Suzuki. So this is the first book in the Ring series, of course, just called Ring. And for those of you who might not be familiar with this series, so Ring tells of a cursed videotape that you watch, and then it kills you 7 days later unless you can figure out a way to break the curse. Now, of course, this was adapted into a film in Japan, which was then eventually remade in the US as The Ring, starring Naomi Watts. And yeah, they both follow the plot of the novel, except the main protagonist in the book is a man, but this was changed to be a woman in the films. But yeah, it all pretty much plays out in the same way. But yeah, really creepy book, really atmospheric, really enjoyed reading this one. And then we also have its sequel, Spiral. Now again, this follows on straight away from the first book. There is also a third book called Loop, which I don't have because for some reason the publishers after this book, they released a hardback version which had a similar cover, but then the paperback had a different cover. and they completely changed them all. And I really, really wanted the continuity of these covers, so I never bought it. But now I obviously really, really, really want to read the third one, so I'm probably gonna have to bite the bullet and buy the different cover. But in terms of both of these books, they are really, really great books, really scary, like I say, some genuinely terrifying scenes. So if you haven't read these, I would recommend them. Then continuing with this shelf, we have Somebody Come and Play by Claire McNally, another horror book. I bought this one mainly for the cover, didn't really know anything about it, but it looks scary, so I picked it up. Have never read it, and I think I've probably owned this book for probably about 20 years now. So yeah, at some point I think I will feature this in a future video. And then we also have Watership Down by Richard Adams. Again, another one that I have owned for years. Picked this up secondhand and did actually start reading it quite a few years ago. I'm not entirely sure why I stopped, but yeah, I would like to go back to that again at some point. We'll probably restart it because I don't remember anything of what I'd read already. But yeah, of course, this is a classic book, adapted into a very classic animation with a swearing seagull. But yeah, I'm very excited to finally read this and finish it. Then next to that, we have Paradise Lost by Milton. This one was actually a gift from one of my old English teachers because I told him that I'd never read it but always wanted to. So yeah, he bought this copy for me. I did try and start reading it once. You can see that I have got a bookmark in there, but really, really couldn't get into it at the time. So definitely would like to give that another go. Then next to that, we have Twilight and New Moon by Stephanie Meyer. I got lent these by my sister years ago, and I only read Twilight and didn't particularly enjoy it, so I never continued to New Moon. But yeah, I do think that actually at some point I would like to go through and read all of the Twilight novels. So we'll probably reread Twilight at some point, move on to New Moon, and then yeah, pick up the next two, Eclipse and Breaking Dawn, and see how I get on with those. And then next to that, we have Ian McEwan's Enduring Love. Now, this was a book that I read at college. We were studying it, and it's probably one of the only books that we read at college that I actually enjoyed. So I've kept that in my collection. And you can see that I've highlighted some things, made some notes. Very, very poor notes because I'm not good at making notes in books, as you will learn when I start doing some review and discussion videos. But yeah, Enduring Love was a great book, and yeah, if you haven't read it, I'd say give it a go. On to the third shelf now, and we have The Hobbit by, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien. And this was lent to me by my sister, and I've still not got round to reading it yet. But I do think that I read it once in school, but I was very, very, very young, and I don't really remember what happens in it. So when I eventually pick it up again, it'll essentially be a first time read, I guess, because yeah, don't remember what happened first time round. Then of course, next to it, we have The Lord of the Rings. So this was a movie tie-in edition. And yeah, it's got all three books or volumes, whatever you want to call them, in one. So The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. And this was bought for me the day that we saw The Fellowship of the Ring in cinemas. And yeah, I think I've read the first chapter of each book because I couldn't get through them. So I thought, oh, let me just skip to the next one. Couldn't get through that, so skip to the next one. So yeah, I would like to just eventually sit down and just get it read properly because I have heard so many great things about it and would hopefully like to experience that myself. Then next to that, we have The Complete Tolkien Companion, which of course is self-explanatory, just has background details about a lot of the characters and places from his books. Then Child 44 by Tom Rob Smith. Another one of my favourites, this one. It's the first in a series. I believe the second book is called The Secret Speech, but I don't own that one and haven't read it, but would like to continue with the series because, yeah, Child 44 was a really, really great book. I really liked Tom Rob Smith's writing. So, yeah, I would love to see what happens to the characters in the rest of the books. Then we have The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. And this was, of course, made into a film quite recently with Daniel Radcliffe. But the book was so good. A very, very good horror novel. Susan Hill is great at just setting the atmosphere, creating the tension, and also just delivering a few scares in the book. So if you do like your horror, I would recommend that one. Then we have Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Now, this one has both Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass in, and I really like the cover on this one. I have only read Alice in Wonderland from this, so at some point would like to go back and read Through the Looking Glass as well. But of course, Alice in Wonderland is obviously a classic. Then last on this bookshelf, we have the Narnia Chronicles by C.S. Lewis. And here they are. So I picked up this box set. I saw it in the window of a charity shop and really liked the look of the covers, so grabbed these, expecting to read them straight away, and of course I didn't. So I definitely at some point will hopefully get round to reading them. I have seen the films, really enjoyed The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, so hoping that I enjoy the books as well. And yeah, so we'll see how I get on with those. Now on to the bottom shelf, and we have The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. Really great book. For those of you who don't know, it's about a girl who was murdered, but her ghost comes back to sort of watch over her family and just process what's happened to her. Yeah, really great book. Would recommend that. Then we have Neuromancer next to it, which I have a feeling that I picked up on a Waterstones 3 for 2, which the Waterstones 3 for 2 is my weakness. So that's why I own so many books I've not read, because I just grab books. And this was definitely one of those. So would love to read that at some point. Then next to it, we have the Artemis Fowl series by Owen Colfer. So here we have the first book in the series, Artemis Fowl. Now, I read this back when it was first released, and I also read the sequel, The Arctic Incident. Didn't particularly enjoy either of them, so that's why I've never really continued with the series. But then my sister did lend me the next two books, so I think at some point I would just like to continue with those, you know, just to say that I've read them, just to see what happens next. And it was, of course, adapted into a film recently, which was terrible. But yeah, the books were all right. So hopefully if I do continue with the series, I will enjoy the later books more. Then after the Artemis Fowl books, we have The Iron Man and the Iron Woman by Ted Hughes. Now, this book, The Iron Man by Ted Hughes, is probably one of my all-time favourite books. It was read to us in class when I think I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I just fell in love with the story. This is actually a more recent cover. The one that I had at school had a complete black cover. You might be familiar with it. And at some point, I really would like to pick up that copy because I really, really love that cover. I think it's beautiful. But yeah, The Iron Man is just a really great story. Obviously, it's very short. It's a very quick read, but I just like having it for the comfort value, really, and because it just reminds me of when I first started having stories read to me. And so, yeah, love this one. And then we have its sequel, The Iron Woman. Again, I think I read this one myself around the same time. And yeah, this is also obviously a updated cover. Again, the one that I had when I was at school was very similar to the cover of the Iron Man. So again, I would really like to pick up the Iron Woman, the original copy. But again, another great book, and would really recommend it for younger readers, of course. Again, it's very short. It's a very quick read, but two really great stories. Then finally on this shelf, we have the Roald Dahl collection. Now this one I think is probably the oldest books that I own in terms of how long I've had them. And yeah, the only one that I've read of these is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think I tried with the Great Glass Elevator when I was younger, but couldn't really get into it. But yeah, obviously Roald Dahl books I'm a massive fan of. Not so familiar with The Magic Finger, but yeah, James and the Giant Peach and of course Fantastic Mr. Fox, both great stories. Moving on to the second bookshelf now. And first up on this shelf, we have Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Really great book. Now, I just wanted to stop for a moment just to talk about Gone Girl, because this really, I've only read it once, but it has become one of my all-time favorite books. So I saw the film first, really loved it, saw it a couple of times at the cinema, and then watched it countless times when I got it on DVD. So finally decided to read the book, struggled to find it anywhere. Then eventually I walked into a secondhand shop and it was just there on the shelf, just staring at me. So knew it was love from that moment on. But yeah, I, as usual, cannot recommend this book enough. I've seen a lot of criticisms of the characters, but I just think they are really great characters, probably not always very likable, but I just love the layers to them. I just love the way that you just don't know what to believe, who to trust. So I would say if you haven't read Gone Girl, then definitely you need to pick it up. If you enjoy thrillers, then I would say that this is the book for you. So then along this shelf, we also have Can You Ever Forgive Me by Lee Israel. Then we also have a Lion King special edition book that was released with a DVD box set quite a few years ago now. Then the Halloween novelization. This was from the 2018 film. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Aragon, Christopher Paolini. Then Stephen King's It. Now this, I actually own two copies of this. This was the second copy that I got. And then this was the first, which is a film tie-in copy. I'm actually reading this one at the moment, so it will feature in a future reading vlog / review / discussion. And yeah, not really enjoying it that much at the moment, but we will get into that when we get to that video. So also on this shelf, we have Danny, Champion of the World by Roald Dahl, and then Loving Colour by Bolu Babalola. Now this one I am very excited about reading. So I bought this from Waterstones on its release day last year. As you can see, it's a special signed copy. And I also bought the audiobook of this a few nights back. So I'm really excited to listen to that. It's got a few different voice artists, and also Bolu herself does read one of the stories. So yeah, really excited to read this, and yeah, we'll hopefully do a video of that when I finish it. Next to Loving Colour, we have Career of Evil by Robert Galbraith. That was the last book that I read in the series, and now, to be honest with you, I have absolutely no interest or intention in reading the others. So yeah, we'll probably unhaul this at some point, but yeah, no more of those going forward. The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft, and read a few of those short stories in there, but will definitely at some point get round to reading the rest of them. Mainly bought it obviously for the Cthulhu story, but yeah, really liked the writing, so would love to just go back, sit down, read them all. Next to that, Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. Loved that one. Then we have Norwegian Wood by Murakami. This one I did start when I bought it, but couldn't get into it, so stopped. But I'd always heard really great stuff about his writing, so perhaps we'll go back to that one. Then The Help by Catherine Stockett. Now, this is another of my favourite books. I had seen the film first, then read the book. Obviously, the book went into a lot more detail of the different stories than the film did. And really loved this cover as well. Really, really nice cover. And then obviously I know that there was some controversy about how Catherine Stockett collected her stories, I believe. But yeah, this was, a great book. I would recommend that one. And then towards the end of this shelf, we have James Herbert Moon. I'm not quite sure where I picked this up from. Don't really know a lot about it, but it seems like a horror type book. So yeah, we'll definitely read that at some point. And then Warm Bodies. Now, I really, really loved this book. I believe it was free. I can't remember. I'm not sure where I got this from now. I think it might have been from a previous job. But yeah, I would recommend this one if you want something a bit different. The story is told from the viewpoint of a zombie who falls in love with somebody who is still alive. Of course, this is a film tie-in edition. So yeah, we'd definitely recommend that one as well. So after Warm Bodies, we have The Devil Wears Prada. This was actually lent to me by a friend years ago, so I really should actually give that back at some point. But yeah, this was all right. Wasn't overly a fan of this book. I definitely preferred the film. I think a lot of the choices that they made in the film worked a lot better than how the story played out in the book. Then Joe Nesbo's The Snowman, another one that I haven't read, but this has been sat on my bookshelf for years now, so we'll definitely get round to that one. And this has always been a little favourite in my collection. So, a novelisation of the film Men in Black. I picked this up from a car boot sale years and years and years back, and I think I did, there's no bookmark in there, but I think I did start reading this when I got it. I haven't actually finished it, but at some point we'll start that again, hopefully finish it. But yeah, I've always held on to this one in the hopes that I would actually get around to reading it one day. Okay, so here we are now on the middle section of the bookshelf, where we have some of what are also my favourite books of all time. So we've got Northern Lights, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass, which of course make up the His Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman. Then next to that, we have La Belle Sauvage, which is the first in the Book of Dust trilogy, which we are halfway through at the moment. The Secret Commonwealth was the most recent book, which I don't have and haven't read yet. La Belle Sauvage was fine. For the start of the trilogy, I thought, yeah, it was fine. Didn't overly enjoy it, but because I know what Philip Pullman can do with his writing, I am looking forward to reading the next two. Then we also have these companion pieces. So we have Lyra's Oxford here, which is a novella set after the events of The Amber Spyglass. And then Once Upon a Time in the North, which is about Lee Scoresby, and that is set pre-Northern Lights. So just wanted to stop again to talk about these three books. So like I said, these are the His Dark Materials trilogy, Northern Lights, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. So I read Northern Lights when I was at school. That was the first time I read it, and was just completely blown away by this book. It was so different to anything that I had ever read before. This is a fantastic start to the trilogy. Then, of course, we have book 2, The Subtle Knife, and then The Amber Spyglass, which I think is probably my favorite of the series. And if you're not familiar with the books, you might be familiar with the TV show, which was recently adapted by BBC and HBO. And yeah, the next one that we're waiting for now is the adaptation of The Amber Spyglass. And I'm excited to see what they do with it, because if you have read this, then you know it's very different in terms of where we go with these characters, a lot of the other characters and creatures that we meet. So seeing that on the screen is going to be really, really interesting, but I'm excited for it. So yeah, if you haven't read his Dark Materials, then of course, I really, really recommend these to you. They are amazing books. I could reread them over and over again. So if you do read them, I hope you enjoy them too. And if you have read them, hopefully you agree with me that they are amazing books. We now move to the bottom of the bookshelf, and this first one is one that I was so excited to find. It was secondhand, and I was really surprised to see it secondhand, so I snapped it up straight away. And it is, of course, as you can see, the Marvel Encyclopedia. So it has great detail about every single Marvel character that has ever appeared in the comics. So I flicked through and read a few of the entries. I'm kind of familiar with Marvel characters that have obviously appeared in the films. But yeah, this goes very in depth to the complete Marvel history. And of course, because it is a comic book encyclopedia, we've got some really, really beautiful illustrations in here. There we have the Avengers. Here we have Thor, who for a very long time was probably my favorite Avenger and my favorite Marvel character, but I think that has possibly changed now. One division, what one division, one division, what one division. It's been Agatha all along. Then next to the Marvel Encyclopedia, we have The Art of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which was a birthday gift from my sister. And then The Art of Miyazaki's Spirited Away, which was also a gift from one of my close friends. And yeah, this is... I haven't had a proper look through this yet, but Spirited Away is probably, well, actually no, not probably, it is my favorite Studio Ghibli film. So this book is just perfect for me. I mean, look at that. Really, really beautiful concept art, behind the scenes images. Yeah, beautiful. So then we also have a baking book. I really, really love baking. Haven't actually tried any recipes from this one yet, but hopefully will soon. Then Folklore, Myths and Legends of Britain and Dreams and Dreaming, which were both recent secondhand purchases. And then we have The Meaning of Mariah Carey by Mariah Carey herself. This was, of course, her recent memoir. And this was actually the last book that I bought, and I think this was either end of last year or beginning of this year. And I also recently bought the audiobook because that is narrated by Mariah Carey herself, and I've heard really, really great things about it. So looking forward to finally tucking into that one, and hopefully that will be in a future video. And then finally on this shelf we have Billie Piper's autobiography, and this one, which is another one that I love. So I went to Athens in 2004 because my sister was competing in the Olympics there, and this was one of the things that I bought while I was over there. So it has every single Greek myth in there, and I've always been obsessed with Greek myths. So this was just a perfect book for me. Really great illustrations and photos of ancient Greek artwork. But yeah, really love this, and you can see where I've tabbed a few of my favourite stories as well. Now jumping back up to the opposite corner, and we have a Lee Child book, The Hard Way. This is the only one of his books that I've read, but I really enjoyed it. And underneath we have Cold Granite by, or was that Granite? Not sure. By Stuart McBride. Don't know a lot about this one. I think I might have bought this alongside Moon, possibly. But yeah, we'll hopefully pick that up one day. Below that, we have The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd, which I think was a present because I'd seen the film. I thought the film was all right, but the book definitely, sort of like The Help, went into more detail about the characters' stories. So you actually felt like you understood them a lot better, understood their motives more than what was put across in the film. Underneath that, we have Red Riding 1974. Now, this one I definitely know for sure was a Waterstones 3-for-2 purchase, and I mainly bought it because Andrew Garfield was looking quite cute on the cover. So yeah, haven't read that, maybe one day. Then below we have the A Game of Thrones books. And here we have the first in the series, A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Now, I'm not kidding when I say to you that this book took me a year to read. I have absolutely no idea why it took so long, but the second book, A Clash of Kings, also took me a year, so it was really poor show on both counts. But yeah, I thought they were all right, the first two books. I recently read the third book, and that was my actual favourite. What was that one called? A Storm of Swords. And yeah, I find with these books, especially with the first two, because they took me so long to read, I needed a break before going to the next one. So that's what I'm doing at the moment as well. I'll read some other things before I then go back and read the fourth book. But yeah, what I find a lot with these books is because they're told through different characters' points of view, I'll sometimes find that there's a lot of points of views of characters that I just don't like very much. And a lot of my favourite characters don't always appear as often as I would like. And I also struggle a bit with Martin's writing, which possibly is why it took me so long to read them. So yeah, they're okay. And I think that by the time I get to the last one, I Dance with Dragons, I don't think even the next book will be out yet. So we'll probably take my time with those. But yeah, we'll see how we get on with the future books. So then underneath those, propping those up, we have Homer the Odyssey. And then For the Death of Me by, is that Quentin Jardin? I think I know this was a secondhand purchase, not sure from where, but I think I mainly bought it because I liked the cover. And then this one here, we have New Moon. And yeah, this was a present a few years ago. And do you remember that period where we kind of had all those parody books? So we had Barry Trotter, Lord of the Rings, and then New Moon. I think there was another one after this, Breaking Yawn, I think it was called. But yeah, I didn't find those ones particularly funny, didn't find this one particularly funny either. So I was actually meant to unhaul this, and then I ended up accidentally bringing it with me. So as soon as I can, I will unhaul that. And then at the bottom here, we have the Harry Potter books. Okay, so that was my bookshelf tour. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed talking about some of my favorite books, some of the series that I really love. So yeah, I would like to hear from you. Have you read any of these books and really loved them? Or have you read some of them and you didn't like them? I would love to know. And yeah, tell me, are there any that you perhaps think you might like to read? Or are there any that you would like me to feature in a future TBR? So yeah, let's have a chat in the comments below. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Bye.